build before you actually start to, work as a product manager to demonstrate that you are going to be a good product manager?
Yeah, I think there are a few key skills. I think the first one is around like product sense and product intuition on
Mhm.
like why are things designed the way they are? How do you make it user friendly? And like what problem is it actually solving? And so I think being able to have that empathy and think about like a user, how they want to go through the flow and how you can design an optimal product in order to get them through there is really helpful. And so this can come from observing people using a product, looking at analytics if you have access to that, but also just interviewing people and talking to people about a product and trying to think through all the different decisions that have been made. I think the next big skill is communication. So a big part of the PM is that you're not actually managing many people. You're often in an individual contributor role, but you are influencing a lot of the people you work with. And so even though you don't have that managerial title, and they're not reporting to you, you have to get them to believe in the roadmap and the vision that you're setting and kind of why the features and the products, the product vision you have is the right way to go. And so I think that communication piece is something they really test in the interviews is can you persuade someone? Do you know the right questions to ask? And be able to convince someone that the approach that you want to do is the correct approach. And then the last thing I think is being data driven. And I think being able to back up why you think you should do the thing you're doing. And that is a form of communication, but being able to point back to user interviews or points in the product flow where you're seeing people drop off or data points on competitive research and how that might indicate why you need to do it. And so thinking about all the different types of data you can have to back up where you think the product should go is super important. And that's something they'll also test in the product execution interviews.
Yep, that's great. Shreya?
Yeah, I think Nina got all the big ones, but I want to second communication. I think there's a misconception that like product managers have to be like super creative and like absolute genius visionaries, and like those are helpful skills, but being able to explain why you think something and like convince people is so, so important. I feel like I spend most of my days in like meetings or writing, and so being able to synthesize a bunch of different pieces of information and like turn that into a thought and into an argument that's like cohesive and cogent and understandable is really, really important and definitely something that's tested during PM interviews.
I love it. Let's go over to you, Alec, for kind of actually preparing for interviews. Um, I know that there's a lot of different things. PMs have lots of different skill sets they're trying to illustrate, but how do you recommend folks prepare for interviews?
Yeah, the biggest thing I'll say is, you have to get the reps in. And like, if you jump into your interview and you're allocating 50% of your mental capacity to trying to remember what was the framework I was supposed to use, or like what kind of product interview question is this, then you're not focused on the content of your answer and preparing for like how you're actually going to respond and what your approach is going to be. And you're going to start missing things, and you're not going to be as confident when you start to actually respond to the question. So as much as you can, get the reps in doing product interview questions. And that, generally that's not going to be just doing them in your head or watching YouTube videos or something like that. Like doing them with someone is really going to be extremely helpful. And that's where a place like Leland is so valuable. You want to be so confident going into the interview on the kinds of questions that you can get asked, that you can solely focus on the best answer that you can give for that specific question. So that's what I would say is really just practice, 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 practice. Eventually it will be worth it. You will get the job, and you can put all this behind you for a while. And at that point, you can actually do the job that you've been dreaming about for so long. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, I love it. Anyone else, Shreya, Parth, Nina, have thoughts on preparation for interviews? I know there's a ton here.
Yeah, I mean, I can jump in here. There's obviously your traditional interview questions, right? Which are like the behavioral ones. Everyone's going to say you should do mock interviews for whether that's, investment banking, product management, consulting, whatever. You should be doing mock interviews. But the way that I've thought about it is, I don't know, if you all remember back when you were in like first grade or second grade and third grade, and your English teacher was trying to teach you how to put together an essay, and they would give you those outline forms. And it's like, what's your introduction? What's your thesis? What's the supporting paragraph? One, two, three, and your conclusion. I've always thought about interviews in that way. And so obviously when you're answering like behavioral questions, there's that STAR framework, right? That people say you should use. But when you're answering other ones like case questions or product sense questions, I've always found it very strategic to use that kind of outline where it's my introduction, what's my supporting argument, what's my reason for that, right? Two, three, and then how do I wrap it up at the end? Conclusion. And then that's kind of the framework that I've always taken with myself as I practice those interviews. And I've seen those be very successful when I was recruiting for product roles and also consulting roles alike. And so I always thought about it like a debate argument. If I had to argue with someone and convince them of something that they disagreed with, how would I do so? And what kind of points would I make? What structure would I follow? How would I obtain that level of clarity? That's what I use in interviews and what I would suggest. And then I think like the last thing is just to know that not every question is the same and not every company is going to ask you the same type of questions, right? So there's certain tech companies that put a larger emphasis on technical questions because they want to make sure that you're in the weeds and know and understand backend and front end development. There's other tech companies that may not really care about your technical expertise, but can more so care about how you work with engineers, how you work with design. Can you answer basic product design questions, etc. So know the company, do your research, and then tailor your application and your interview strategy in that way.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's where practice is so valuable because if you of course like practicing going through the motions is part of it, but it really is starting to train yourself to think like a product manager that then can apply those learnings and those frameworks in different situations and actually just think through the problem as opposed to trying to recite something that you read online. Um, let's go to Shreya and then Nina for this one. How do you recommend folks? We have a lot of folks in the chat that are trying to pivot from different roles or trying to break in as students or whatever, all sorts of different kind of backgrounds on this call. How do you think about the experience question that gives you enough to land the interview and then, of course, like actually have stuff to talk about?
I mean, as people have said, showing that you can build something that people love to use and enjoy and connect with is an incredible way to get your foot in the door as a PM. So I come from a pretty traditional background, with software engineering being my bread and butter, but I think the thing that really opened doors for me was I run a nonprofit that writes letters to seniors, and having built a business and scaled it showed that I am able to think like a PM and look at metrics and look at numbers and talk to people and build something that people want. And so if you have an idea for a club or for a little startup or a little product, I would really encourage you to get out and try and build something. I think that's the best way to get relevant experience and to stand out.
Love it. Nina?
Yeah, I'll second Treya. I think like trying to actually build something and put yourself in the mind of a product manager is the best way you can do it for a nonprofit, a club, anything related to school. Another good way could be like a hackathon. So if you're at a current company, like propose starting some kind of hackathon, think about it in the context of the company you're already at and like what are the problems. And you can be the PM who's like leading the team during this 1 day event and see if you can kind of carry the idea through. Another kind of good thing to do is for companies you're applying to, try to leverage these no code tools and come up with like a feature improvement for them. See if you can prototype something, see if you can do some customer interviews, get feedback on it, and kind of the end-to-end experience of what it's like to actually develop something that's an MVP. Think about why you designed the thing you did and what would you change and what were the trade-offs with that. Even being able to talk about that in an interview, and if it's not the company you're specifically applying for, maybe it's your favorite product, that'll kind of get you in the mindset of having these good stories to share about how you've either hands-on built something and then kind of iterated on it to actually address real people's needs.
Yeah, I love that. I when I was in college, I started this little baseball company, and every time I went to a product management interview, I brought the baseball with me, and I would like give my interviewer one of these like physical products. And I think it was always it was like a physical representation that I wanted to communicate to them that I've built something. And I think that it just kind of comes back to figuring out how you can be memorable and figuring out how do you kind of communicate to them that you are a builder at heart, in the stories that you tell or in the anecdotes you bring or even physical things that you can bring. That's great. Thank you, Nina and Treya. Okay, we've had a ton of good questions in the chat, and I'm sorry we're not going to get to everything, but I appreciate our panelists trying. Yeah, we dropped the Leland community Slack in there to get to know folks. Right now, I'm just going to make sure that we have 1,000 people. We've actually hit our limit, so welcome to the 1,000 that got lucky enough. The rest of you have to watch live stream. Make sure you join, or yeah, I guess put your name in the giveaway for this because we are going to raffle it off in about 20 minutes. And it's going to be a ton of value. This starts in a couple of weeks. So make sure that if you have not done this already, it looks like a few hundred of you have already done it. But yeah, the rest of you, make sure you do this. You can go to bit.ly/product week to make sure you enter the giveaway. It's going to be awesome. Just a quick overview of what the bootcamp is. There's 7 sessions, an hour and a half each, where we go through a lot of the stuff we've talked about tonight, but in more detail and actually focused on helping you make specific progress towards this goal, not just learning about things. So Product Week is going to be learning about a lot of this stuff. The bootcamp is where we actually dive in and start to make progress, and you can actually get interaction with the instructor. We cap the number of people that join the bootcamp, so they're very high value. Everything from getting the interview and actually getting in the door to specific types of interviews like product design, execution, favorite product questions, take-home assignments, technical or even analytical interviews, and then of course behavioral, and taught by many of our best coaches, some that are on this panel, and yeah, others that are very popular. So make sure that you register for the giveaway. Yeah, tons of value. We're actually doing a sale tonight for those of you that don't win the giveaway. If you book tonight, you get it for $600, which is way cheaper than normal. So make sure you take advantage of that Product Week discount while you can. And yes, we will. We do record all of these, and we'll send out the recordings later. And we also record all of the bootcamp sessions as well. The bootcamp also comes with free access to Leland Plus, which is awesome. So you get all the expert videos and sample resources that come from that library as well, which we have hundreds of coaches that have contributed to that library. So make sure you enter the giveaway if you have not, and I will stop talking about the giveaway. Just want to make sure that everyone finds out about it. All right, let's go back to questions for our panel. What are some of the common mistakes that you see folks make during the recruiting process? I know a lot of you have worked with candidates, both as your clients on Leland, but then also kind of as you interview folks for your respective companies or prepare them. What are some of these common mistakes that you see make? And I'll open it up to anyone that feels strongly about this question or wants to highlight certain mistakes they've seen.
I have one. I know someone who applied for like a AI coding startup and had never used the tool before or talked to anybody who had used the tool. So I think for any company you're applying to, either have used the product, and if you can't use it because it requires like an enterprise license, get feedback and have some like insights on how you would actually improve the product when you go into the call, even on like the very first hiring screen, because you want to show that you're thoughtful and like why you applied to the company and that you actually understand what they're doing. And then the second one, I think that's a big issue, is not knowing. I think a lot of companies are going to ask like what AI tools you're using. And so you can be pretty proactive instead of just saying like, oh, I use ChatGPT. Think about if you were taking a product management role, what tools you would use and maybe what tools you've been using in the job application process to make yourself more effective, and draw parallels to the actual product management job. Because companies are looking for people who are more AI native, and like you, as someone who's young and interested in this, could bring that to the team.
Yeah, it's such a good call out. Every CEO on planet Earth is wanting their company to be more AI native. Everyone. I don't think anyone feels like they've made it per se. So I love that suggestion. Alex, Shreya, Parth, anyone else have thoughts or mistakes you've seen folks make?
Yeah, I'll jump in with 2 here. Number one, specifically talking to the kind of new grad programs or internship programs. It is first week of July. The next 3 to 6 months are going to be pretty crazy when it comes to these applications opening, and they open for very short amount of time. So one thing I would recommend is, create a pool of like resume ready bullets that you can then cherry pick from and build a resume that's catered towards each job description. And so instead of spending 2 hours rewriting your resume for every job that opens over the summer and fall, you can spend 15, 20 minutes just picking the best bullets that are the most relevant to that company or that job posting. And you could bang out those applications really quickly because they're going to open really fast, and they're not going to be open for very long. So you want to be able to go through them pretty quickly. The second thing I will say, and it's my favorite tip to give people, is I found that interviewing on a laptop at a desk is really unnatural and it doesn't feel like normal conversation talking to people. And so as much as you can, try to like elevate your computer up to your eye line so that it feels like you're talking to someone in person. That conversational nature is going to come through to the interviewer. They are then going to be more conversational and natural back to you. And like you can show how personable you are that way instead of sitting super rigidly at a desk and you're really nervous. So I found that putting your screen up makes it feel a little bit more like a regular conversation, and then that helps you do the interview without being as nervous as you might be.
Yeah, it's a great suggestion. There are kind of like best practices with cameras that if you don't know, you should definitely take note of, like arm's length away from the camera, eye level, like you said, Alec. Even things like removing AirPods so it feels like you're actually talking to someone normally can help with like connection in an interview. So some of those things that we hear, which is great. And Alec, you can keep your headphones in, don't worry. If anyone has Shreya or Parth, if you guys have other mistakes you see being made, that would be interesting to hear.
Yeah, I can give one more. This might not matter a ton for your first interview with like a recruiter, but I think it matters a ton in your like hiring manager interview and later in the process. Is that I feel like from folks that I've chatted with, I've seen a lot of people not understand the product landscape for the company that they're applying to or interviewing at. So I'll give you an example, right? Let's say you're interviewing at HubSpot, and the hiring manager is curious about, what you know about HubSpot, the product, etc. So as others have said, obviously know, what the product is, how it works, ideas, etc. But I think I would take it one step further, understand where HubSpot sits in the market, what their audience is, who they serve to, why they've chosen to serve to that audience compared to some of their other competitors, what their pricing and packaging is like compared to their competitors. So like HubSpot, it has a big focus on small and mid-level businesses, whereas like Salesforce, one of our competitors, has a big focus on Fortune 100, 200, 300 companies, right? They're similar products insofar as that they're customer relationship management softwares, but they serve different type of companies. And that matters when you're making product decisions. Instead of serving for those upmarket customers, you might be focused on solving for lower market customers. And the problems that these customers feel is not the same as the problem that these customers feel on a daily basis, right? So understand why companies are priced the way they are, who their target market is, what their audience is saying about them. One like hidden tip is if you're interviewing at any B2B software tool, if you go on LinkedIn and just search that tool slash or comma like complaints and you click post, you'll find a bunch of people ranting online about why they hate using that tool. Aggregate that data, understand what issues people are facing, and then come to the table with like an actual solution or an insight about it or like some research that you've done and what you've put together. I think you having that understanding and just taking an extra 20 minutes to do some actual research about the customer's perspective is going to make the hiring manager imagine you in that role. That's a win.
That's a great suggestion. Shreya, do you have anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I think I've got two things. So first, this is not a sprint, it's a marathon. Like the whole recruiting cycle for the APM world is long. I think you guys are all in the right position because you are thinking about this early, right? You've got the summer where you're not in school. Getting ready is going to be huge. Like write resumes for all of like the companies that you know you're going to be applying to because like you know that Google and LinkedIn and Uber are going to have APM positions opening up and start mocking and reading now rather than like trying to figure out how to like do a mock interview in like the 2 weeks before you have a final round scheduled. Beyond that, I think a lot of people think that application is done and submitted the second they hit like submit on like a job application portal. There are things you can do after that. Reaching out to the recruiter, talking to people at the company, continuing to do research, looking at like Glassdoor or Exponent to see like what other people have been asked in the past. Um, an application is just like step one. There's more you can do afterwards.
Yeah, these are really good tips. A couple other maybe tactical things. So, someone made a call out that when you get a referral, which every company has some sort of a referral process, sometimes it's formal where they actually put your name and email into a system and then you apply through a separate link. So don't apply before you talk to your referral source. Other times you can apply and then they can like tag you as a referral. And then other times like startups, like there's no referral process, but you still like having a referral still matters because it's just kind of a vote of confidence. So make sure you play the referral game and you work on it early. Don't do it like right when the application opens. I remember every year at LinkedIn, right when the application opened, I'd get hit up by like 50 new people that wanted to network with me. And at that point, it was just too late for me to give a referral to all these different people. But there were other folks that had built a relationship with me for a year. And so when the time came that the application opened, I actually told them about it. And so make sure you're kind of building relationships early. This is also why a lot of times with a coach, people will make a target company list with their coach. They'll figure out the best ways to actually network into those companies. And by the time those companies are interviewing, they have everything they need to be successful and actually getting the interview. And then of course you have to nail the interview, but that actually getting through the door is super valuable. So make sure you take care of that. Okay, we're gonna keep it going. We have a couple more questions here. This is great. How do you work with folks that you've coached through the PM recruiting process? I just mentioned one of the things you can do, which is like make a target company list and actually make a plan on networking in the process. But I'll open it up to anyone that has thoughts or maybe highlights from what you've done with past clients and how you've helped them be successful in the recruiting process.
I can go first.
Yeah.
So the way that I think about coaching is not a one size fits all approach. And so the key thing that I like to do when I'm working with people is not lean into your weaknesses or kind of helping you build your weaknesses, but doubling in and playing and betting on your strengths. And so I treat it like a roadmap. Like we start pretty background heavy, like what's your story, what are your target roles, what are your key gaps, and then we build from there. So we revamp your resume, we make sure all the basics are done, right? We revamp, if you need a cover letter for certain positions, we make sure that you have a good framework to do that. If you don't have a project portfolio, we make sure you have that. If you have trouble with interview preparation, we make sure we do that. And I've created over the last couple of years some like really good ideas and understanding of how product interviews work and how the recruiting process works. There's this packet that I like to hand out to people I work with. That's like the 7 product manager interview questions and the framework for answering each one and how you go about doing so by leveraging your experience. So I try to give as much tactical feedback as possible, mock interview coaching, accountability, of course. But I try to help people think of the investment of their time in as one that has a very high positive return on investment. So the more amount of time that you put in now, the more amount of time that you and I work together and I tailor my coaching to you specifically, which is why I try not to take on a bunch of people at the same time, is so that you land a job and then you can hopefully coach other people after. And then we just get a lot more cool, great people into product management. So that's kind of like my thesis of trying to help people breaking into product is that we have more and more better PMs and then they go out and help as many other people as possible. And so I try to work with people by understanding what their actual goals are. And then you and I work together to define those goals. And you and I work together to create good actual next steps to do so. And then like, yeah, the last thing I'll say is like, for me, it's the most important thing is like your success. So whatever that means, whatever we need to tailor ourselves to, we'll do that together.
Yeah, I love that. Nina, Shreya, Alec, anything else that you guys do unique? Nina?
Yeah, I'll just add to that. I think a lot of people have relevant experience, but maybe they're not portraying it in their resume or in their behaviorals correctly. So similar to Parth, I like to do like a background and kind of learn more about what you're working on, and then have me look at your resume and then actually ask questions about like, what does this mean? How can we translate this experience to a product experience? So not like lying, but thinking about like, are there certain actions you took as a part of that project that relate to what a product manager would do? And how can we make sure that's showing through in your resume? So you have both like the functional parts of the role, but also like the metrics that they would care about or metrics that would show the kind of impact that a product manager would be expected to have. And then the second thing is more tactically, like the interviews of doing the mock interviews, making sure you're prepared for the take homes and what kind of questions to ask, and really like researching who are you interviewing with. So once you're further in the funnel, also making sure you're very well prepared for when you do have the final interviews.
Yeah, that's great. Alec, you're going to say something.
Yeah, just to add on to that, I think one of the most important things when it comes to starting this whole process and being prepared for it is like crafting your story and like having a well-rounded resume that covers as many different areas of product management as you can. The job is going to differ from company to company and even team to team within the same company. So like if you can cover a little bit of design and a little bit of strategy and a little bit of technical skills, like, all of that stuff on your resume and communicate it effectively, you can then tell the story that you've prepared in all of these different areas for this product management role. And, because this is what you had set your sights on, and you want to make sure you're a well-rounded and, qualified product manager, regardless of the level that you're applying for. That I think is really important. And so that's usually where I start with clients, and, from there we can then go into your resume and really make sure that everything is tailored and optimized for what it needs to be, to get your foot in the door. That is the first thing that's going to go through the door and get you the opportunity to even speak and tell your story. So, you really have to spend time making sure that it's as perfect as it can be.
Love it. Shreya, anything else?
Yeah, I mean, beyond crafting a narrative and building a strategy for applications, I think one of my favorite things to do is to like work with someone as they like learn how to product interview. It is a skill. I feel like no one really teaches it. A lot of people kind of figure it out by reading or watching others. But working with a coach, I think, is quite special because you get real-time feedback from someone who really understands the process. I think you're also able to learn those skills. As Parth said, there are tons of frameworks and ways of like little heuristics that you can use to like do very well. And so I think working with a coach allows, or working with clients has been really fun because I get to like teach that to someone else.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, we've seen some really special like coachee relationships. Actually, funny enough, one of the from a couple years ago, we had someone that worked with a coach on Leland and got into Meta's RPM program, and then they personally coached like four of the next year's Meta RPM folks as well. And so there is kind of this like, you know, kids and grandkids effect of being able to help kind of the next generation, and we see that all the time. Okay, let's do a kind of final advice. We've covered a ton of ground. Make sure, again, that you register for the individual events because we are going to go much deeper than we were able to go tonight on all of these. And then, of course, I know like lots of you have already started to schedule intro calls with these coaches, but you can do that as well if you want to go deeper personally. But let's hear like any final advice, Shreya. I'll go back to you if you have any thoughts first, and then we'll go Alec, Nina, and Parth to wrap us up.
Yeah, I remember when I was recruiting, it was really stressful and overwhelming, but I was given the advice that like I should be having fun, right? This is exciting, right? You're learning a brand new skill, you're reading cool books, you're thinking about new ideas, you're getting to try like being very creative and thinking through problems that are interesting and different from what you tend to find in like your academic life. Leaning into that enjoyment and that joy of it is really important, I think, early in your career.
I love it.
Yeah. I would say, prepare for what's going to be probably a grueling few months applying. Try to get out of the mindset that you're going to land the first job that you apply for, or even one of the first 10 that you apply for. You're going to submit a lot of applications. You're going to hear a lot of rejections. You're also going to not hear from a lot of companies, and you're not going to get a lot of responses on LinkedIn for those coffee chats. So be okay with that. Be prepared for that. Just try to keep your head down and like have a good attitude when it comes to this whole process. Like I said earlier, like when you get to the end of it and you've gotten the offer and you're doing the job, and you're doing the thing that you set your sights on, all that time and effort and stress will be worth it. So yeah, just try to keep a good attitude.
And just to add on to that, I think in some ways it is a little bit of a numbers game, but don't let yourself like apply too thinly to everything. I think prioritize the ones you do apply to that you really are excited about and try to go deeper on them, like sending more thoughtful outreach, trying to really understand their product, cold emailing someone on the product team, building something if you can that you can send them just to show like you're really interested. But I think it's also good to apply to many things and get practice interviewing because practice is really what's going to make you better. So yeah, I think go deep, but also don't be afraid to apply to other things to get more practice.
It's great. Parth, bring us home, man.
Yeah, I think like somebody told me this a couple years ago and it stuck with me till since then. But the most underrated product that you'll build is yourself. So every PM, asks like, how do you build great products? I think the real question early in your career is like, how are you building yourself? So that means you understand your users, which are your values. You run experiments like side projects, internships, creating content. You interviews, rejections, getting mentors, getting coaching, and then making bold bets. So you're never going to be in a place in your career where you have an undeniable 100% understanding of where you're going. I think that's very rare for most people. But if you treat your growth like product management or like product development, you move fast, you listen, you document your progress. I think that you will build conviction, and that is going to serve you much farther in your career than almost anything else. Whether you end up doing product management or you do something completely different, believe in yourself. That is what interviewers remember. If somebody can go into an interview and they're like, holy crap, this person is super interesting. Like, I feel like I would just have fun working with them. Less like they know everything in the world, but more of just, I can vibe with this person. You'll win.
It's great. I love that. It's a great note to end on. So helpful. Can we give some love to the folks on this panel? This was amazing. I know lots of you have already started scheduling intro calls with them, but we'll drop their names, their links to their profiles in the chat. This was awesome. Thank you for taking time out of your evenings. This is the final call for the giveaway. If you haven't entered it, I'm gonna read off the winner in just a second. This is great. Sorry, I guess the chat's going to be blown up, so the giveaway link might be hard to find. And I appreciate you guys trying to monitor the chat as well. There were a lot of questions that came through, so I know that it's not easy. Okay, the giveaway winner is Aditya Khanna. So Aditya, we'll reach out to you and make sure you'll get your free slot in the boot camp. The rest of you, we're going to do other giveaways throughout the week and also take advantage of the discount on the boot camp this week. You also can reach out to these coaches, as we've mentioned, to get coaching from them. They will fill up, so if you're interested, definitely get on their calendars soon and book calls with them. If you don't know where to start, you can also set up a call with our team. We're happy to talk you through some of the different options and how to kind of navigate the recruiting process. We have an awesome team of folks that can kind of help guide you and make sure that you have everything you need to be successful. And as I've mentioned dozens of times, make sure you sign up for each event that we're doing this week so that you can make sure you get all of the recordings and other things. And yeah, I think that's everything. Thank you all, four of you, for taking the time to be here, and wish you all the best on this call. I know recruiting for product is not easy. It is very competitive, but it's also super rewarding. So